Regina needs a pillow.
Hi, Regina.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there.
Did you wear bells?
Did I what?
Bells, remember?
The
Yes,
last you said you were going to wear bells,
they're invisible. You just
They-
have to you have to
okay.
visualize them.
and you
Oh,
can't hear
okay.
them either.
Well, you can hear them, but you have to really work at it. You can just like, then you can hear them, right?
I thought the ringing in my ears this morning was a lack of sleep, but we'll go with the bells.
So, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Wonderful. And you have all kinds of things going on here. This
I
DRJ.
do. I do. I'm doing a ransomware exercise design workshop tomorrow on Tuesday, and then I am talking about polycrises at the
Mhm.
general session on Wednesday morning, early, 8 o'clock.
Yeah, that's the first part of the poly crisis is that
It's
you
getting
expect
up.
me to be there at 8 in
Yeah.
the morning.
I know. I wish they would not always put me at 8 o'clock on Wednesday, but
You do. Yeah, you should talk to Bob Arnold. Maybe 10.
yeah,
Is
I'd
10?
like 10. I think
I
10
think
would be good.
I would like you at 10 as well, because then I would sleep through the 8 9s. And
and then just show up.
exactly.
Yeah, it works for me.
Now, I like your topic of polycrisis because we've talked about that a few times.
We have.
Regina, for anyone that doesn't know, we do a monthly episode.
We do.
And
Whether we need it or not.
and it takes us usually 3 months to go through one topic.
Yeah, because we're
we
just
keep
so
talking about-
long-winded, right?
Yeah.
We have so many things to discuss.
Why don't you give us a quick definition of what polycrisis is? Because really, that's a term a lot of people are using now, but it's a new term.
Right. It actually, there's two terms that are new that people are hearing about. One is the perma crisis, which was actually Collier's dictionary word of the year in 2022, and all that means is a sustained crisis. So something that just goes on for a long period of time. I think polycrisis is a better word. And it originally was invented, if you will, about the 1990s by a French philosopher. But then it became the word for 2023 at the Davos Economic Forum when Adam Tooze, who's an economist, talked about polycrises. And then the media just went like, oh my God, that's like it. And what a polycrisis is when you have multiple crises that all begin to feed off each other and they actually magnify, they entangle, they're entwined, and they become significant. And a good example of that would be the Ukraine war. So when you stop and think about the Ukraine war, just think of all the crises that have spun off of that and into that. So even before the invasion, there was about 15 million people that left Ukraine. So there was this migration issue that went to other countries, and that began to create issues in those countries. Then after the invasion, there were three major businesses that really began to they stopped to exist. So technology, which used to be a huge part of the infrastructure and the business in Ukraine, drug manufacturing, and then agriculture, and think of wheat, and then think of where they sell that wheat to. And so it's primarily sold to Africa and to India. And so now the UN firstly announced that there'd probably be at least 2 countries in famine at the end of 2022, the first year of the war. Now there's 9 countries in famine. And it's causing that is causing not only starvation and suffering and all of that, but it's now causing migration because all those Africans and Indians that can't feed their families are going someplace else. And so that destabilizes other countries. And just, it's a cascading series of things where it's all one event has created so many other things. And it's really what we as professionals need to be thinking more broadly and not just looking at a thing, which is what we have a tendency to do, I think.
Yeah,
Focus.
so let's talk about that. So your traditional or classic business continuity is there's one event,
right,
a building that catches on fire,
right,
and now I wish it was that easy,
right.
So how are you helping, how do you help our colleagues in the profession go from a single known high risk event to that type of polycrisis where while that building is on fire, there's also 13 other things happening to your organization at the exact same time?
When you're a team of one.
Correct. Get to that.
Are you expressing angst there? Yeah. So I think there's a couple things. I think You know, we had, traditionally in this industry is really focused on a variety of skills and issues, and one of them has always been continuity plans. But what I would say to you is that right now, I would say to you, and I say to my clients, is the most important thing you better have nailed down is crisis management, even more so than continuity plans. Not to say that continuity plans aren't important, but if you can't manage a sustained, prolonged crisis, that is a far bigger issue. And what I'm seeing now in many of my clients who have been doing different crises after crises for the last, well, since the pandemic started, is that we now have a burnout problem, and the crisis is in the personnel, and there's
Yeah.
not enough of a bench, and people are fried, fried, and that is a problem.
Yeah, Heidi spoke about that with us earlier. As she said, like I had to take a minute. I needed some downtime just because there was so much happening.
Right.
So,
Right.
and I think a lot of us are in denial about, again, with that classic BC event,
Right.
it's a week, it's 2 weeks.
Right.
And for a lot of us in our profession, they're in year 3, 4
Right.
of a poly crisis. And because they're a team of one, they're not getting that downtime. And we
Right.
are seeing burnout, I think, at levels we've never seen,
Right.
you know, with first responders, with emergency managers, and with private sector.
Right. And a good example of that, actually, it relates back even to the pandemic, which is the healthcare system. And if you look at Canada, if you look at the United States, roughly around 30 to 40% of the physicians have quit since the pandemic began to really tone down, and about 40% of the nurses. Well, then that creates an incredible, I mean, it's that cascading series of things. And so what I say to my clients all the time, especially in this, and not just in continuity, but in crisis management, is that you have to have a bench and you have to work the bench. And what happens a lot of times is people go, well, no, I'm the only one that can lead the team or whatever.
Yes. Yes.
Right? We've all seen people like that, and maybe even yourselves sometimes, right? And then what happens then is that people are fried. And I always say, I say, you just can't pull the needle out of your arm, man. You know, it's like, I mean, well, I know it's sort of funny, but it's true. And even when they have a bench, they don't use the bench. And it's like, no, what that means when you have a bench of 2 or 3 people that are going to be, you know, you should have at least a tertiary bench, that you should be, you know, taking 1 week on, 1 week off, or you should be, you know, having shifts if it's a 24/7. But people don't do that. Like,
Why do you
what are
think
they
that
gonna do?
is?
I think there's a lot of control issues. There's a lot of fear issues.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like, oh my God, what if somebody does it better than me? I mean, it's complicated. And I see that at all levels, not just at people at our level, but I see it in executives all the time.
It's interesting. You just mentioned fear and control or losing control.
Right.
I'm planning a test soon, and people were saying, okay, well, let's simulate this, simulate that. I'm going, okay, fine, we can do that. And I got to the end, and they said, okay, so this test will represent over 48 hours or something. You know, they don't have 48 hours to do the test, but I said, okay, fine, then let them keep going. And then I asked him, I said, so who's doing this test, by the way? Oh, I am. I'm going, really?
You've been up
So
for how many
you're
hours?
going to be doing this you're going to represent 48 hours. Now, one of you have talked about shift management or alternates or backups or anything.
Staffing schedules.
And everyone dead silent on the phone.
Right.
Everyone just dead silent.
Right.
You know, so it's interesting you just said that everyone, it's not just them who are saying that. You know.
It is a chronic problem, and I don't know if it's like we have a cape that we just think that once we put it on, we can't take it off. But it's a problem. And what I'm seeing now in my clients, I'm spending a huge amount of time in 2 kind of different areas, but I've been consumed with de-risking China, which makes me crazy. I'll talk about that tomorrow on Wednesday. And then the other is, you know, a lot of issues about the financial collapse potentially around the world. And so
just 2 small things.
2 small
on your
things.
plate.
Big, yeah.
Right. Right. Like I can't sleep at night. My husband says, you know, maybe you should get a different job. Yeah. After 40 years, I don't think so. So, but the point of that is that those are gigantic issues. And how can we as a profession just keep going blindly without ever stopping to think seriously about that? And I always look at my clients who are usually like the continuity person or the crisis manager, whomever. But then I frankly look straight up and say, okay, you know, the food chain above you is not doing that either, right?
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And so we need to embed and we need to work on this. That this needs to be an important thing because, frankly, you know, we're not going to be standing if this keeps it up.
Do you think there's a problem because some of these polycrises or crises in general, let's face it, because things are happening all around the world.
Right.
They happen so fast and so frequently that some people just say, I'll get to that later. There's too much for me to deal
Well,
with.
part of that is, I mean, it is a triage. I mean, like, okay, if you only had one crisis, you could just knock yourself out on it. But if you've got three, okay, well, then somebody's going to be more important than the other one. And then you're constantly trying to manage that. But then your boss often thinks that they're all important and they all need
Exactly.
equal time and, you know, whatever, but they're not giving you more people or they're not giving you more money or whatever. And so I think I think burnout is going to be a huge issue for our profession. And I certainly see it already in many of my clients. And I've been talking to executives about this idea of these sustained crises. I'm doing a big job right now, actually in Canada. And it's about this very issue. And you know, they say the words, but they don't do the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Regina, we're going to work on that. When are you going to work on that?
So can you think of a client where you were able to successfully bridge that gap between executives saying,
Yes.
oh yeah, this is important, and then actually putting, you know, the resources behind it?
Yeah, but I think what it requires is that it's got to be an executive sponsor who gets it, who understands it, and is willing to support it. And what I find in most of my clients, to be honest with you, is that when I look at their program, they can have a pretty decent program. But then what I find is that the governance around it sucks. If I could be so bold.
Absolutely, you can.
Yes.
But I think the issue is, and when I say governance, what I don't see is I don't see a strong executive sponsor. I don't see a strong commitment at that level. And what I don't see is an effective use of what I call a resiliency steering committee. And by that, I mean, many times my clients will have those and they're kind of perfunctory. They get together, they talk about a few things. But what I want them to do is I want them to basically help enforce the program. Because the job of a steering committee is to see, okay, we did these many plan reviews with these deficiencies, and we had these many exercises, and this is what hasn't been fixed or has been fixed. I need somebody at that level to say, I have a carrot and a stick, you know, and they're gonna basically, because you don't have that juice, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you don't have that kind of program, that means that you're just going to be barking up a tree the rest of your life.
Yeah, I
be
love
honest.
that you mentioned that strong program governance requires strong executive sponsorship, because so many
Right.
times organizations are like, well, we have a program doc, we
Yeah.
have a steering committee charter, so we have governance, like poof,
No.
magic.
Yeah.
And then the people on the steering committee aren't
Have no
aren't-
authority.
yeah,
And they have no
do
carrot.
anything.
They
I
have no
think-
carrot and stick.
Correct.
Yep, they have no authority. They have no carrot stick. There's no.
Right.
It ends up being someone, and I'm not knocking names. You know, a data entry person who represents that area,
Right.
who can't make a decision there or anything. You know, so it
They're
becomes
just
useless.
taking notes. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, you know, and maybe one of the ways around this, I'm trying to work with a client who can't quite get that executive support, but maybe what they can do is they can get something through audit. And so that's another
Okay.
potential way,
A different stick.
a different
Yeah.
stick, right? But I think, I mean, if that doesn't get solved, that's only just going to reinforce the fact that we are just kind of barking up a tree. And that's a problem.
Outside of all of those different things that you mentioned, and you know, a lot of people in the industry potentially feeling that burnout either now or soon.
Mhm.
What kind of things do you think we should be doing now to get more people in
To the profession?
to our profession?
Well, that's a great question. So, for example, one of the associations I've been involved with for a long time, IAEM, International Association of Emergency Managers, they actually have a scholarship program, and they actually have, as part of their mandate, where they really work with college students and people interested in the field, whether they're coming actually maybe out of the military or other parts of government, trying to, really encourage them in through emergency management. They do all kinds of sponsorship for them, and when they have events and conferences, they really focus on them. And they have a CEM board that is all about scholarship giving for that. So it's one way that you can say, oh, that's a person that would be, that'd be a great emergency manager. And I think we could almost look at a model like that and say, why aren't we, whether it's BCI or DRI or whomever, why aren't they thinking more about proactively? Because the only way people get in this business, let's all be honest, like you don't wake up in the morning going, "Ooh, I want to be."
It's the money, right?
Oh, you're so
like, how can I quickly make 8 figures?
Yeah,
I want to be
right.
a business
Yeah.
continuity
Right,
practitioner.
right. Well, I think the problem is that no one wants to. No one does this job because it's like I was like, I was getting out of high school and I went into college. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to go into continuity planning. I mean, people that have gotten into our jobs, it's because somebody turned around and was like, hey, Alex, you want to do it? No, you're going to do this. And you go like, okay. And next thing you know, you're doing it, right?
Yep. By accident.
Right.
That's
And so people have fallen into this field and they fall out of it. And so I think there needs to be probably, and maybe one of the other ways around it, besides really looking at college students and people like that, would be actually embracing like the risk industry. So I think about, like the conferences like NIMS and other ones that are really, RIMS are like super, high level conferences about risk and risk management.
Yeah.
And maybe that's another way, is to engage risk professionals and enterprise risk, because this is, I think, yeah.
Or you could get us a speaking gig at Davos next year.
yeah.
If you could make that happen, we could change the industry.
Right.
We definitely get in the headlines then.
We definitely would be.
you know.
We'd be talking poly
I'm
crisis
free
and
to
everything.
travel to Davos. So
Me too.
I'm happy
I'll open my calendar.
I can move some things around.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's busy, but I can make it happen, right? Totally understand.
Regina, thanks for stopping by.
Oh, so fun.
I'm so glad you did.
So
I
for
always really
the
enjoy talking
4
with you.
people in our profession who don't know you,
Oh, right.
first, shame on them. And 2, how can they learn more about what you do?
Oh, very good. Well, thank you for that. So, 2 ways. You can obviously go to my website, but the easiest way, frankly, is if you just Google my name,
Okay.
and you're going to find me probably in the first 10
All
pages.
of them. Yes.
And
It's true. It's true.
It is true.
It is true. And the other thing is that LinkedIn is a great way to find me. I post lots of articles of interest. I posted a really interesting one about China, since I've been spending so much time thinking about China a couple of days ago. And, I would get featured often in LinkedIn, and I had like 25,000 reads on it in like 12 hours. And I went like, oh, so I'm easy to find on LinkedIn.
Fantastic.
And you can check in our weekly show, monthly.
Weekly, daily.
No, we're not
Monthly.
doing weekly.
No, we can't do weekly. No, monthly.
Monthly.
Regina, those always tends to be a little bit ahead of the curve every time we talk.
A little bit, always.
Yeah,
A
'cause
lot.
We talked about
Yes.
polycrisis 4 or 5 months ago, if
Yeah,
not
at least.
longer.
Yep.
And now everyone's talking about it. So check those out. Definitely lots to learn. I know I learned something. We always have a great chat. So
We do actually. It's
just like the ones I have with James this week in business continuity. So
Exactly.
yeah.
All right. Well,
So,
it was a pleasure,
Thank you,
Regina.
Thanks.
And enjoy the rest of the conference, and
Thank you.
all the best on all your. Well, you still have lots to talk about and present. So.
I do.
And
Thank
if you
you.
could
All the
move your
best.
speech to 10 a.m.,
I'll let you know. I'll send you a
just for
text.
me.
I know.
We'll put in a good word for
Please.
you.
we'll see what we
Please.
can do with Bob Arnold.
Yeah,
for you.
please.
Yeah, we'll
Great.
do that for you.
Thanks, gentlemen. It was
Thanks,
fun as
Regina.
always.
Thank you very much. Even if you don't have the bells.
I
that's
know,
okay.
no bells.
Next time.
Next
Yeah.
time.
Next
There's
time.
always another time.
Next time you probably will have the bells. It'll freak
Oh,
me out.
I'm bringing bells
It'll
next
freak
time.
me out. You watch. I don't know. We haven't touched on that yet, have we?
We haven't even gotten to that yet.
haven't-
We
we
don't
haven't
plan
got rid
that
of this.
far ahead.
We haven't
we're
got
still
to
in
this one yet,
Phoenix.
so
All
we
right.
will talk about it though.
Thanks, Regina.
Thanks, Regina. We'll see you later.
All right, Alex, we have reached the bottom of the hour
We have.
again. So want to mention that this hour was sponsored by Stone Road, the firm aiming to help organizations prepare for, respond to and overcome adverse situations. Thank you, Stone Road. Speaking of bells, right now I'm either about to have a stroke or there is someone walking around. I hear bells in the background. I'm hoping it's not the stroke. I'm hoping it means it's time for sessions to start back up.
Yeah, I don't recognize the tune. Free Blind Mice, maybe. I don't
Free
know.
bird. I'm not sure.
So we'll be back in 10, 15 minutes, and stay prepared in the meantime, everybody.
If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.